everyone, I'm Edyta Sitar from Laundry Basket Quilts. Welcome to Quilting Window. I am so thankful you are here because guess what? It's time for our Summer Mystery. Summer Mystery 2022. Are you excited? I am. I cannot wait to show you some fun clues so you can make a beautiful blocks with me. So let's start it. For next 9 weeks, every week, I'm gonna show you a clue for a block. We're gonna meet up on Wednesdays on our blog and our YouTube channel so you can see what we're making. You're gonna be making blocks with me, and then in the end, we're gonna be putting the blocks into a beautiful quilt. Are you ready? I am. So today is block number 1 for our Summer Mystery 2022. In my sewing basket, I have a beautiful ruler. This is a 6.5 inch ruler. Our blocks, we're gonna be making in a 6.5 inch and 9 inch blocks. So you can choose either one, 6 inch or 9 inch. There you can choose whichever one you wanted. The directions for cutting are going to be on our website. So when I show you the blocks, I'm going to be referring to our website, to our blog, where you will find the directions what you need to cut every single week. I'm gonna be working with a simple, beautiful linen texture bundle. I have 2 yards of a background fabric, and then I have beautiful pieces that I have selected from myself. And if you are selecting pieces from your stash, remember the most important part is that you have a nice shading from dark to light in your fabric, and you have a fabric that would be your little accent fabric. So I chose my little bit of an orange, this beautiful burnt orange right here, and I chose browns through blues through teals into light beiges for the shading of my quilt. This is the fabrics that I'm gonna be using for next 9 weeks. We do have beautiful bundles on our website that you can purchase, and if you have done that, thank you so much. We very much appreciate. If you have not get the fabrics, just get into your stash and just pull up fabrics. You're gonna need 8 fabrics in dark through medium through light, and you're gonna need 2 yards of background fabric, so that way you can make your quilt. And like I said, we're gonna be making giving you directions for 2 different sizes. So go to our first blog where you have all the directions for the housekeeping, from fabric requirements and everything you need, and other bundles that maybe you want to use. You can use the Practical Magic bundle. You maybe want to make your quilt from our beautiful collection called Lady Tulip. Or if your heart is set in on blue and white quilt, our Bluebird bundles are really nice. We have the Dove and we have the blue bundle right here. So you can go ahead, visit our website at laundrybasketquilts.com so you can get the fabrics that you want. All the blocks, like I said, I'm going to be showing in the linen texture to give a simple look to the block, and then you can apply all those fun things to it. In the end of my video, I'm going to show you a scrappy version of this block, just to start you up on some ideas and give you a little bit more clue to this quilt. So stay tuned. Also in my little sewing basket, I have marking pencil, I have my handy tool, I also have needles and a scissors and my pins. I just filled up my pin cushion with a fresh set of pins, so I'm super excited about it, and I love those patchwork pins. And I would recommend the 2370 Aurifil thread for sewing. We're sewing a lot of dark through medium through light fabrics, so this thread is gonna work really nice for us. So 2370 is the one you needed. I also have my ruler that I like to cut strips with it. If you would like to, you can get that ruler on our website, but you can also use a simple 4.5 by 12.5 ruler. We always use that one. That's a simple fun one. I'm gonna show you right at the beginning how we cut strips, because a lot of the blocks that we're gonna start are starting with strips. So let's do that. So when you're cutting strips, you have to remember to lay your fabric the right way, so that way you have a nice straight strip. And because I'm using the smallest size ruler, I have to fold my fabric a 3-way. So I'm folding it, I'm paying attention that it's nice and straight. Then I'm gonna take this edge and I'm gonna fold it to this edge, making sure that it's nice and straight. Then I'm gonna go ahead, place my ruler right over. I'm gonna match the edge right there, and I already trimmed that edge for myself, so I'm gonna match that edge with my ruler, and I'm making sure that this is laying right on the bottom line, so that way I know I'm gonna be cutting nice and straight strips. And I'm gonna cut my strips at 1.5 inch, 1.5 inch. And if you forget the measurements, that's okay, because you can go ahead to our website and they're all there. And every week, like I told you, I'm gonna give you the recipe for the block for that week. So, but this is just basic how to cut strips. I'm gonna cut 1.5, so my next 1.5 is right here. I'm gonna place my rotary, and this ruler allows me to cut a lot of nice, beautiful strips. And look at this, when I open it up, I have a strip that I can work with for my block. So this was just the basics on strips. If you wanted to, you can use a simple ruler and cut it with that one. And when I do that, let me show you. When I cut it with just a regular ruler, oh, I have a little thread hanging on here. So again, when I cut it with a regular ruler, I would fold my fabric just in half one more time. I matched it up, my fold edge to my selvage edge. I lay my fabric nice and straight on my cutting board. I'm gonna grab my ruler, and there are two ways of cutting strips. If you know you need a 1.5 inch strips, you can go ahead and place your ruler, match it up with the edge, measure 1.5, and now go ahead and cut it. You should always use the ruler to measure your strip. Don't try to use your board to measure your strip. That's not really a good idea. I like you to use your board to lay your fabric nice and straight, to be nicely organized. But when you're cutting your strips, make sure you follow the ruler. And one thing that I noticed, make sure that this line right here, it's not next to the edge, it's right on the edge of your fabric. Why? Because if it's next to the edge, your strips are gonna start being a little smaller, and you want to be right on it, so that way you are nice and straight right on that line. And now you go ahead and cut it, and look at this beautiful another strip. And I would like you to know that for our quilt, I'm gonna be giving you directions for cutting strips, but if you have leftover strips from all different projects, that's okay. I'm gonna show you an option where you can reuse all of those scraps and leftovers of strips, as long as you line them up really nice. So let's start lining our first scrappy panel. That's what I call them, scrappy panel. We are gonna start with making a strip panel, scrappy strip panel, and then from then we're gonna cut our block. Isn't that fun? So that way the work goes nice and fast. I'm gonna move this to the side to make myself a little bit more room. And I noticed something, when I do my strip panels, I like to keep my selvage edge on one side and my straight cut edge, this is the straight cut edge, on the other side. Oh, I forgot to tell you, when I finished cutting my strips, when I finished cutting them, I took a scissors and I cut them in half right on a fold right here. So that way it's easier for me to make my panels, and I'm gonna be making sometimes 2, sometimes 3 panels. Today we making 2 panels for 4 blocks. So that's what we're making today, is 2 panels for 4 blocks. Block 1, we're gonna be making 4 blocks 1. So by cutting it in half, why did I do that? Because when I sew my panels, when the strip is really long, sometimes it's hard for me to stay accurate. When I have a shorter distance, only 20 to 21 inches, it's easier for me to keep a nice flat panel and nice and accurate. So cutting it in half, it's not gonna mess up anything for me for my blocks. It just gives me a little security blanket that I can make this really nice. So right there, and it's going to be about all pinning, sewing, keeping nice 1/4 inch seam allowance. I have cut my fabrics for my first panel, and I selected dark, another dark, medium, another medium, and 2 light options. Do you see what I did? So that way it shades really nice from dark to light. Now all that I have to do, if I'm pleased with my colors, I'm gonna go ahead and grab 2 strips, place them right sides together, and I'm gonna take a pin and pin it. And I noticed something, sometimes by the time I pin it and get to my sewing machine, I get mixed up and I sew on this side, and then I cannot use my strips. I have to start over again. So what I have learned, that I put my pin this way, marking I need to be sewing on this side. So pinning it really nice and having my strips laying on a board just freely, so both of them laying, not that one is pull and stretch, no, just laying nice and freely, and then grabbing my pins and pinning it one place, little bit by little bit, one place at a time, one pin in the middle, another pin right here. Don't be shy on the pins. Why? Because it is a long distance, so you don't want the fabric to stretch. You want it to have points where you're gonna be holding, and you're gonna make sure that when you stitching, your machine is not pulling the fabric in the bottom and creating a little wave. So this would be my set 1. I'm gonna do the same with the set 2 of my pieces, pin it, and do the same thing with the last set right there, pin it. And as soon as I finish, I'm gonna go ahead and start sewing. And I did that for you guys already. Look at this. I start sewing and I finish my 2 strip sets of 2. Look at how nice they look. Sets of 2. I pushed my seam allowance towards the darkest fabric, so one way, and it is for block 1, it doesn't matter which way you push your seam allowance, but in the future, just to give you a little clue, there will be a place where I will be telling you push your seam allowance this way or this way. We're pushing our seam allowance one way. And just another thing about stitching, we're going to be using our 2370. We're going to be using a Macrotex needle, so nice fresh needle. And what I need you to do is make your stitch length a little closer together. Why? Because when we finish our panel, we're gonna be cutting pieces out of it, and we don't want the fabric to fall apart because we cut it. We don't have a way to lock it. So now first set of 2 is done. We press our fabric towards the dark. Now it's time to grab 2 of those, place it right sides together and pin it. But let's stop for one moment. I took it for granted that maybe you know this, or maybe you already have practice. Before you start sewing 2 sets, 2 full sets, can I please ask you to take your ruler, place it right over, and check that the size of your strip set, the 2, are 2.5 inch. If it's 2.5, yes, you did a great job on your 1/4 inch seam allowance. If it's not, now it's the time to address this. If your strip set is smaller, that means that you have took too big of a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So you need to adjust. And how do you do that? Is just make it little, move your needle to the right, so that way you make sure that you have a nice 1/4 inch seam allowance. If the 2 strips, the width is bigger than 2.5, that means that you are shy and you're not taking enough fabric in your 1/4 inch seam allowance. So get some confidence, get a nice good 1/4 inch seam allowance. And you know what I do is, I many times when I start up a project, I put a piece of paper under my sewing machine's foot. I punched a hole with a needle, and then I measure where is the distance between my needle and the edge of that paper, to make sure that it is a 1/4 inch, and that way I know I'm doing a nice job. Make sure you're not including the thread in the measurements of your 1/4 inch, because you know, you want to make sure that when you open it up, that way your measurements are exactly right there, so you're not taking more than you needed it. So please check your 1/4 inch, make sure that everything works right, and now you go ahead and grab those 2 strips, and you're gonna go ahead, place them right sides together, pin again. I'm gonna lay it all the way just like this, beautiful. And I'm gonna place my pins right here, and I'm matching this side of my strips. Why I'm matching this side? Because they're all nice and clean and cut. Where here, notice they're all different length because fabrics are a little bit different, one comparing to the other, and that's okay as long as we pin it. Now we can go ahead and sew it from this side back up. We want to alternate our sewing. Your first sewing goes from left to right, the second time from right to left, and as soon as you finish, you're gonna go ahead and have a beautiful panel like this one. And look at it, all my seam allowances are pushed up right there. And when I'm pressing, I'm making sure, and I always start, I first a finger press, I make sure that my seam is open, and then I gently press it with the iron using circular options. And yes, I did prep my fabric with best press before I cut it, so my fabric is nice and stiff and perfect to work with it. When you finish your panel, it should be 6.5 inches width. If it's not, that's okay. If it's too small, that means that your seam allowance was a little bit too big. All that you need to do is add another piece of fabric so that way we can fit on it what we want to cut next. If your panel is bigger, that's okay, because guess what? We're just gonna be cutting our block 1 now by placing the ruler right over. We started it by trimming the edge. That's the first thing. And then second, measure 6.5, and look, I'm gonna cut it. And what I like to do is, in this case, I'm paying attention that my middle line, that white line is in the middle of my panel, so that way nice I can trim the top. Beautiful. And now I'm gonna rotate my block, put my ruler back on, make sure that all the edges are beautifully covered, and I can go ahead and trim my bottom right here. Isn't that nice? And guess what? We just finished block number 1. You're gonna cut 3 more of those from your 2 panels because you need 4 total of those beautiful blocks. Wasn't that fun and easy? I promise you this mystery is going to be amazing. I'm starting you nice and easy, teaching you how to make a scrappy panel. And now let's take a second to talk about speaking of scrappy, some other options. If you have a beautiful fabrics left over from all different projects, and they're all different size, from 1.5 to 1 inch to 2 inch, yes, you can use them. You can go ahead, sew them together into a beautiful panel. Keep checking that it's 6.5 or a little bit more if possible, because it's nice to be able to trim it from all sides. And if it is super easy now. All that you're gonna have to do, and I use some scraps, some leftover scraps. All that I'm gonna do is place my ruler, and notice it is a little bit bigger on the top and the bottom, but that's okay. I'm gonna center it up, and what I'm paying attention is I'm noticing this strip is nice and big. I love that, but I don't want to be any smaller than 3/4 of an inch from the seam down here. Why? Because later on when you sew this into the quilt, it's gonna leave you 1/2 inch peeking through it. You don't want to come too close like this, because then you're not gonna have enough to show off that fabric. So I kind of center things up, and now I'm gonna go ahead and cut it. Look at this, and cut it. And I'm going to rotate this. My rotating table could come very handy right now. This would be great. Next time I'm showing you this next block, I'm going to be using my rotating table, because I love that low table. It works perfect. So right there, trim it. I'm paying attention that all my lines are nice and even. Trim it. And if something went off and it's a little bit crooked, that is okay, because we want to make a fun scrappy quilt if you would like to. And what we wanted to do is play off with nice beautiful pieces, and you can reuse anything that you want to, as long you lining your fabrics from dark, medium to light, your results are going to be just spectacular. So here, this is the option that it's more organized, where all the strips are all the same sizes. But yes, I'm going to be showing you a little bit of a more scrappy option where the strips are not as organized and they're a little bit having a little bit more flavor of fun and exciting colors for anybody that is doing this from their own scraps or using our other bundles that we have on our website. So guess what? Clue number one. You got your strip panel, you figured it out how to do your good 1/4-inch seam allowance, and you have made your first block for our mystery quilt. I hope you enjoyed it. Happy quilting, and I can't wait to see you next week.